the vocabularies that I have clarified, they should not be unclear, but when I say things like 제법무아, which is all dharmas that like serve nature, you have to know it. Well, it actually refers to the object, the things that we see and the sound that we hear. And the scent, it is the object of what we smell and taste and touch, whether it's cold or whether it's cold. So while we first the outside boundary, and because of that, we also have the subconsciousness that's arising. And that is also the object that has been formulated from our senses. Our consciousness has not been there from its own nature, but through the object of our dharma, it has been formed, and that's like the dharma. That's like the dharma, and here the dharma refers as the consciousness. When we say five skandhas, the things that we feel because of that, and because of our consciousness, the dharma that has been created because of our consciousness, it's all dharmas too. So when we say all the things, they don't have their own true nature, and so they are phenomena that has been encouraged because of the phenomenon. But they don't lack, they lack their own self-nature. So in Buddhism, when we talk about Buddhism, whether that is Buddhism or not, or whether that is outside doctrine, the most important criteria is the discussion or conversation about absence of self. When we emphasize that there is something that is not Buddhism, when we say there is God, or there is God that's eternal, or there is also the God who we call as ourself, that already is not a Buddhism. But for to say in India, when you say Brahmin is there as a god of as a creator, then that is not Buddhism. And also, if you say that's eternal, that is already not a Buddhism. And also, if you say there is Atman that never dies, or the nature, that is not Buddhism. So again, when we try to extract what is Buddhism, well, it is the teachings of Buddha. When it is not the absence of self, when it is not void, then it is not teachings of Buddha. Well, if we pray to the God, and if something goes well, then that is not Buddhism. Only about 7 people are nodding. It means that is not Buddhism. And so even if there were many things, even if there are many discussions that's similar to Buddhism, the way that we figure it out is whether it is absent, or whether it is void, or whether it is not void. And so if there is something eternal, for example, the Buddha without the limitation of life, is that Buddhism or not? The Buddha with never-ending life. Is that Buddhism?
만약에 우리가 불교에서 얘기하는
Is that
무량수
Buddhism?
열에 불걸 때 무량수 그 수명이 끝이 없는 부처 그러 나왔잖아요, 그죠? 그 불교의 아니에요?
Then when we study, when we just look at it verbally, the Buddha without life's end.
불교
But it's void, how can it be immeasurable?
그 말 그대로 듣고
The translation over there talks about the voidness. It refers to the voidness. And so the immeasurable here, it is not the absolute value.
무량강 무량수
It is not the relative value. So
무량광이라는 무량수
because of that, it becomes Buddhism.
뭐냐면
So the things that can be applied as Buddhism or things that doesn't apply as Buddhism is if you make a paper stand and
그러니까 어떤
it is just the difference of this side and the other side.
그래서
So even if you come to monasteries so long, there are Buddhisms that becomes outside doctrine, and there are also Buddhisms. There are also true Buddhisms, even if you don't come to a monastery. It doesn't lie in your physical presence. Even if you go to the monasteries, it's very important to go to places where the Buddha's teachings are being passed, because without that, it's not possible to study properly. This morning when I was walking by, I saw the lettuce, and because I planted the lettuce, I can eat what I have grown. Isn't that so? If there is true nature for the lettuce, can I eat it or not? I cannot eat it because it doesn't change. The fact that I can take it out, it is also the change, and the fact that I can eat, that is also the change. If there is something that doesn't change from the lettuce, then I cannot eat it. Isn't it?
상치에 만약에 자성이 있었다 그러면 상치를 내가 뜯어 먹어서 못 뜯어 먹어.
So
이게 뜯어지는 것도 변화이고 내가 먹어서 소화가 되는 것도 변화이죠, 그죠?
he said there is someone who never dies.
상치에 무엇이 있다 그러면
He said that Jesus has never died.
그렇죠?
He said the pastor, he said he was taken to a cave and he survived. And
안 죽은 놈 있으면 데리고 와봐 그러니까 예수가 안 죽었다 그랬어. 그 어떻게 안 죽었냐 그랬더니
the wall was already loud when he lived for 3 years. But after that, if he lived until 50 to 60, then it is not something. Then the whole world would have faced a different outcome. But there is no evidence of his survival, whether it's Matthew or any other disciples. There is no sense of his livelihood at all. So when we asked where did he live, they said he went up to the sky. Well, I almost died when I was going up the 4,000 kilometers above sea level. So I asked him, did he take his own body form to go? And he said yes. And if you go a little higher, well, even the top of the Himalaya mountain is it's more than minus 50 degrees Celsius, and also there is very lack of air. And so it feels like your feet is about 40, 50 kilograms. Even if you try to walk, it's very difficult. And I asked him, then how did he go? How did he fly to the sky?
공기가 산소가 희박해가지고
Then this is totally like, as per our proverb, this is like the teachings of ghost, and if you want to write novels, then there will be so many topics on it. Yesterday, because the Descendants of the Sun was so popular on TV, I saw the well. It was really interesting. I saw it, and
그런 소설을 쓰려고 그러면 소설이 천지백가래요.
such pretty and attractive people. They're also the main actors, and even the conversations or even the script, it's so good that people would be surprised. So the Chinese women, they would be amazed.
애들 눈이 획 돌아.
You saw it a couple of times.
그 이쁜
After you have aged.
주연으로 해놨지. 해놨는데 그 대사가 애들이 깜짝 놀라게끔 해놨어. 네? 그러니 뭐 중국 여자들이 그냥 발칵 뒤집어 버리지. 어?
Well, Song Joong-ki was really handsome, and who is the actress? They're the same Song family. She was also good looking, and even the sub actors, they were also so good looking.
아이고 그
I heard that it's very popular in China, and also soon it will be broadcasted in Japan too. I heard in the morning that in China, when they had holiday for
전부 다 뜯어 고쳐서 그러나 왜 그렇지 않습니까?
when they had a tourist program,
난리가 나고 좀
if
있으면
the
그 방송에 나간대. 그래가지고
well, it was just like a storage room for us where they have filmed. But just because there's a picture of Song Joong-ki, they want to go there and take pictures.
그 송중기
And if that's not included in the program, they don't want to visit Korea. And I thought that is amazing.
중국으로 여행을 안 올라 그런대.
But in really, well, we live our life surviving on those futile things. We do business,
그냥 그거 가지고 인증
and we
난리를 치고
and we also cheat many people with that.
참 진짜 대단하다.
In different ways, we cheat people, and we feed on what we have earned.
걸 먹고 이제 우리가 살아요. 그래서 또 장사해.
Well, it happens when you go to the training center. The trainers wearing the red cap, they are really bad people. And when you go through the wire, and when you go to the top, there is a lady, and she says, "Go front, march forward." And when you go up to the top of the mountain, there's also a lady who comes to sell bread even at the top of the mountain. And in order to eat that, all the money that you have saved, well, it's obvious there's nowhere to hide. So you just you open your stitches and put it there of your jacket, and while you cross the wire, because you have to cross it straight and upside down and with many different postures,
그거 사 먹으려고 돈 꼬부치 놨던 거막이 군복 그
and they make you roll until the money slips. And if the trainer sees the money that has been slipped,
아이 거꾸로 통과.
then the trainer asks people to march forward, and we cannot even come back to collect money. And the trainers, they collect all the money and drink in the night.
돈이 빠져나올 때까지 일부러
So when we go up the mountain, we cannot find the $10 that we have hidden so preciously. And if they cannot find money, then if the money doesn't sleep, then they make you roll until it does. Well, this is not a present story.
걔들 그거 싹 주워가지고 저녁에 술 먹는데. 그래 올라가서 보면 뭐이 돈이 10,000원짜리 하나 넣어놨던 게 어떻게 빠져가 버리고 없고 그냥.
So you earn in so many different ways, and even the military uniform of Song Joong-ki,
그런다는 얘기가 아니야.
it is also a very hot item to sell as a present for their children. They said everything doesn't get sold well, but only his uniform is still very popular despite the bad economy.
요즘에 애들 사다 준다고 중국 그 관광객들이 시장에 동대문 시장, 남대문 시장 가가지고 그 옷이 그냥 하루에 몇 100벌 갖다
The
놓고
world is so futile. The world is so in so much vain, and it just goes and comes, and by looking at them, you want to do some plastic surgery, and you want to increase the stock price, and you want to increase so many different things. But
세상은 그렇게 그 허망으로 사는 거라. 예.
but Xi Jinping asked the question, why can't we make the Korean drama as good as that? And if it doesn't taste your and but the Chinese people, they pay a lot of money to the Korean producers, and they take them.
시진핑이 왜 우리는 그런 드라마를 못 만들었냐 그 얘기지. 한국처럼.
So every time when you think
좀 잘하는 사람은
all the things that we see, listen, speak, taste,
그 한국
all the things,
한국 방송은 그냥 이제 이상한 것만 나오거든요.
it's very important to observe that there is no true nature for all the things that we see or taste.
항상 생각할 때 모든 우리가 지금
Despite all these discussions that I have done, you have to apply to it. But even after listening to it so long, you still say, well, I went somewhere and asked, and my ancestor is blocking my future. And so the things at my home it doesn't go well. And so I joke about it, like, why are they blocking it in this dimension? They could have blocked it in some other way.
어디 가서 물어보니까요. 그 조상이 앞을
What's with the person? The person believes that there is something eternal, just like Chinese. Well, Chinese people thought in this way, most of them.
그래서 내가 농담 삼고 왜 새로
So when Chinese people talks about the story about Sun Wukong, they talk about the fight with the god of death, and because Sun Wukong is so talented with his majestic stick, he ruins the whole place, and he messes up the whole garden.
손오공 보면 막 옥황상제고
Well, if that's a heaven that could have fight, then why would it call that as a heaven?
그러니까
Those stories, those fairy tales of imaginations, are things that we can make with our own imagination. And even those stories, and even different gods that we have made with our imagination, you also have to know very well that they don't have their true nature, and they are also very futile.
상의 얘기들은 우리가 얼마든지 지어낼 수 있는 얘기들이고 얼마든 관념으로 지어낼 수 있는데 그 얘기들마저도 그 관념으로 지은
Well, here the sentence could have some misunderstanding.
이런 것들도 전부 다 안에 실체가 없는 흑우라는
The
것 갖다 잘
the old when all dharmas lack self nature, there cannot be any self nature or the stage of beyond the truth of complete enlightenment. When we say you are seeing the complete enlightenment, it's not that you are seeing its true nature or property, but
제법무아인데
we are seeing that we lack our self nature.
그죠? 그건 이 말에
We are seeing that there is no self nature, so it is the voidness. So we are observing the voidness.
자성을 보는 것이 아니라
So it's not okay to say that the stage of beholding the truth of complete enlightenment is seeing the true nature. That's the misunderstanding.
그죠? 그럼 그걸 갖다 꼭 자성 없음을 보는 거니까 자성이 없으니까 공성이죠. 공성을 갖다
It is also written absolute here, and even the word absolute here,
견도라 그러면 안 된다.
I think is wrong. Because the voidness is never absolute. The voidness or the changes from dependent arising, it cannot happen.
절대라고 그래놨죠, 그죠? 그 절대란 말도
And so in Prajna Paramita, it's written
나는 안 맞다고 봐. 왜?
that
공성이란 말이 절대가 아니야. 절대인 것 같으면 공성이 또 연기해서 변화되는 것은 일어날 수 없는 거야. 그죠?
the matter or form is not different from emptiness or those things. While the translation was being made, the translation was not clear. So it is not the absolute bodhisattva.
그죠?
There is no different enlightenment to say. In other words,
안에 심오한 그 내용을 갖다가 채취하지 못하고 이제 한 소리라 그 말이야.
It's double checking that all beings don't have its own natural property, but everything is void. But how do you check that? I would enter into samatha, and when we observe all sentient beings, we realize everything is void, and we double check that this is nirvana.
자성이 없음을 공성임을 갖다 확인한 건데
It is not something else.
확인하는 것은 어떻게 확인하느냐면
So believing in Buddhism is believing in this.
일체를 관찰해 보니까
When we say we believe in Buddhism,
또 이것이 니르바나.
the greatest belief for Buddha is experiencing the voidness, and so realizing that the boundary that afflictions never existed. Well, if there's agony, then Buddha cannot be present too.
최고의 믿음이라는 것은 어떤 것이냐?
You need to change to that state.
완벽하게 사라진 경계가 번뇌라는 게 본래 있지 않았다라는 경계가.
So here the object is
저도 있을 게 없죠.
the object of what you see, the color of what you see. When you are observing the senses, even in that observation,
것인데
nothing has its own true nature.
사물의 끝자리를 보는데 들어가는 거죠. 사물의
And
세상에 이게 사물 그러면
as
아까
per its
얘기한
property, everything is void. And
색성향 미촉법을 얘기하는 거야. 색성향 미촉법을 우리가 관찰하는데 그 관찰 속에서도
And those who believe this, we call them as Buddhists. And knowing that there is a method like this,
본질적으로
and entering into this path, we say we enter in through the road to the way of Dharma.
묘미가 있다고 말이지. 즉 열의 종생
And people who enter in this way, and
이것을
the people who enter in this way, we say they are Buddhists, and they have entered into Dharma.
것을 갖다 우리는 그 알고서 그 길로 들어간 것을 도를 통해서 들어간다라고 얘기하고 그렇게 돼서 들어가는 사람과
Why didn't you come for many days?
뭐라 그러냐면 불자라 그러고 불문에 들었다 법에 들었다
Even now, your eyes are somewhere else. What are you thinking?
입문했다 이렇게 얘기하는 거야.
You didn't listen.
도에 들었다 그렇게 얘기하는 거야.
You were not listening.
네 왜 맨날 안 나왔냐?
Your eyes were somewhere else.
지금도 지금 딴 생각하고 앉았어. 눈이 저거가 있어. 네뭔 생각했냐? 안 들었어. 안 들었지?
We enter into the flawlessness of Bodhisattva. Well, when we talk about the 10th stage of Bodhisattva, when we enter into the 10th stage of Bodhisattva, that's the final stage of Bodhisattva.
보살의 무결함에 들어가는 것이면 이제 보살의 무결함, 보살이 보디사트바의 길이 보살 구경지라고 하는 것은 보살 십지를 얘기하는 거거든.
And when we say
보살의 법운지에 들어서 보살 십지에 도달했을 때는 보살의 이제 마지막
when you say when you have attained unsurpassed enlightenment or equanimity, you're like 99% like Buddha, but not 100%. So what is flawlessness of Bodhisattva?
뭐냐면 부처님 유사품이야.
Entering into the flawless state of Bodhisattva
9%
refers to the fact
근데 0.1%가 아직까지 돌렸다 그런 얘기지.
or attaining or reaching to the place where it is flawless. It means you have become Buddha and you have achieved omniscience.
보살은 결점 없는 보살제 이르는 것은 보살지를 가지고
And there is a boundary where you change from lay people to Buddha. And this boundary, we can experience this boundary. And to here,
돼서 일체 종지를 이룩했다는 뜻이야.
it's not that you have to think that when will I be able to reach that state, but
중생에서 이제 부처로
but you need to have confidence or assurance that there is a stage like this. And if you take your step ahead or forehead, that is the practice of bodhisattva.
해야 되는 것이 아니고
So even thousand
이제
miles, we
지금
say it starts from one step.
이런 길이
But
있다라는
if you believe
확신을
that
갖고서
with just one step you want to go to Seoul,
그렇게
then even for a rocket to get to Seoul, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes.
그 이제 우리가 뭐 천리길도 한 걸음부터라고 그냥 보통 사람들은 에라이 모르겠다 그냥 한 걸음 뛰면서 서울까지 바로 가버려야 되겠다 그러면 그거 안 되거든요. 이거 뭐그 빠른 로켓가 날아가도 서울까지 가는 데는 뭐 하여튼 뭐 5분 10분은 걸릴 거 아니야.
The Dharma property of Bodhisattva, by understanding and listening to them, you also, well, depending on the the essence of what the Bodhisattva desires. In other words, compassion and voidness or the wisdom. With those dharmas, the true nature of them and the true nature of the boundary, after seeing them and knowing them. And so once you start to enter into the boundary of bodhisattva, then first, even when you're at the first stage of bodhisattva, it becomes very bright. The whole world, everyone in the world would look like Buddha, and you would respect everyone, and you would also make a great aspiration to save or protect everyone until they attain nirvana. And only if that kind of sentiment arises, they will provide you the boundary for you to deepen your studies. So those petty little things in your everyday life, let them go. Don't do too many petty things. When you go to the mountain and when you collect oats, then those strong people, they'll bring the soul and they will cut big trees and come down with what you have gotten. But those people who are weak, they will just bring the twig. With that, you cannot even boil water. Forget about heating up your room, but you cannot even make a simple porridge. You should not have too many thoughts, just like the twig that cannot even make a simple stew. Well, over there, 1, 2, 3, only about 5 people. It should not be so little. It should not be so petty. You have to have a little. You should have a little bigger perception, and with your continuous practice, the shallow and also very narrow-mindedness of yours, you have to try to reduce them. Even the water, you know those water that goes in the very like canals, very small canals. Even when the water is very less, the sound is very loud, and also if the water slips through a different hole, you can't even find it. Just like the river, it should flow like the river, that even if it flows somewhere else, you can still find it. As for the people to live, you should have that kind of a little like haughtiness, arrogance. But here the arrogance does not mean you need to, arrogance doesn't mean in your appearance or even in your personality. With very little things, you should not be too obsessed. Well, even when you live with your family, when I listen to people living your everyday life, well, at least where you have not fought with matters regarding the unification of Korea,
이게 좀 이게
where
좀
many
과하게
times your ideas, your opinions on the unification of Korea,
부모끼리 살
it's the
때도
same.
가족끼리
And
사는 거 내가 가만히
when
들어도
husband makes a comment about the political issues,
적어도
the wife, even if you don't want to listen, you agree. But with matters like socks, why did you take your socks out here? Why is your hairstyle like that? Why didn't you color your hair today? You have little gray hair or more gray hair. You fight over such matters.
꼭
You
뭐냐면
don't?
신발을 왜 요따 벗어놨어 그거 가지고 싸우고 앉았고 이거 입고 가라는데 왜 저걸 입고 와서 그러는 머리를 갖다가
Don't you?
6팔로 하지 말고 3대7로 하면 어쩌까 요 가지고 싸우고 앉았고 뭐 물을 들이니 아 내일 들인다니까 그리고 오늘 들이고 가지 뭐 조금 올라왔니 내려갔니 그거 가지고 싸우고 앉았고 그러잖아 예?
Don't you argue with your husband about little petty things?
일가 오살림은 안 그래요? 뭐 예? 영감님이 밥을 차려놓고 가는데 말이야 무슨 김치를 그렇게 적게 내놓고 왔는가 뭐 그런 거 알아요?
So a bodhisattva remains in the Dharma. What does it mean? With the bodhisattva and the compassion. The bodhisattva is completely immersed in the six paramita practice. The bodhisattva does not have other habits or other thoughts. The bodhisattva is obsessed or immersed in six paramita. We don't even need much, even only the believers of Sakchon Monastery who are here.
전념해 있다 그러니까
Only if people who are here have great aspiration, and only if they can reach to the 10, even if you follow the
여기 우리 많이도 필요 없어 우리 석천사의 신도들만 말해 신도 여기 법회 나온 이분들만
even if
하고
you reach the 10 stages of faith, then you would also realize that if you only have even the confirmation, then even with people who are only gathered here, we can turn around the whole provinces of Korea, the entire country.
깨달음의 길이 확실히 있구나 이 길을 갖다 내가 죽자 살자 중생을 위해서 노력하는 이 길이 내가 깨달음으로
We try to do something. We always try to do something with virtues or merit even less than our palm. And all the time we try to come up with some cunningness to change our future. And that is so weak. And even if we have very strong strength regarding that,
맨날 이럴까 저럴까 하면 꾀부리는 거 가지고 깨를 부리가 뭘 좀 해보라
well, even if I have very strong punches, if if hundreds of weak people attack me, then nothing can happen. So even for the president,
100명이 힘을 합하면 내가 못 당해
when the entire
아무리 잘 써도
when all entire Korean citizens want, then
그렇잖아요 그죠?
then the president also agrees. But if you turn
5천만 원을 갖다
everyone against everyone as how you want, then you cannot change it. So politics, it's never possible if you try to win over the citizens. When you're living in your house, even it's between you and your husband, can you win over your husband? Well, you cannot win over your husband.
못 이긴다고 그래서 정치라는 것은 국민을 이기려고 그러면
So what do you say? You say losing is winning,
살때
and winning is losing.
남편 이겨먹고 습디요
And when we ask both of them, the both of them also say, both of them have tolerated. It's never on one side. Well, you say, if I don't tolerate, do you think I can live with her? And also, the wife says, I have tolerated a lot. That's why we can live together.
이 얘기 하잖아요 그죠? 그리고 보면 두 사람 다 물어봐도 두 사람 다 참았다 그래 할 때 한쪽만 참은 게 없어. 아유, 내가 내가 안 참으면 저 여자 데리고 살겠습니까? 또 주사는 그러고 보살한테 물어보면 내가 어마어마하게 참았으니까 그러지 지금.
So a bodhisattva has to know the Dharma nature, and by residing in Dharma and keeps practicing her practice, all the offerings of Dharma, offerings,
법성과
many different offerings, and also very strict about following the discipline, and very strict in tolerance, and also very strict in with your discipline. Only samatha and even with the vipassana observation, it's very strong, and they will still realize it's just like a bubble. And
그다음에
where does their
항상 그 절제하고 이
and
요거는
where is the motivation? The motivation comes from the willingness or aspiration to save all sentient beings.
일상생활하면서도
Bodhisattva survives with that idea.
참 물거품 같은 것이야. 라고
I was
하면서
giving teaching some place, and they asked me question, and when I said Bodhisattva, they took Bodhisattva as the rice,
보살은 그 생각으로 사는 거예요.
and they asked me what is Bodhisattva.
전에 누가 내가 어디 가서 법문을 했는데 질문하라 그랬더니 보리살타는 그랬더니 보리살타를 갖다 뭐라고 알아듣느냐고 보리쌀로 알아듣는다.
When you are in the first stage of Bodhisattva, when you say you have entered to the basic platform from the first stage of Bodhisattva, you're entering into the land of a saint.
보살의 초지. 그러니까
Only if you come to the beginning of Bodhisattva, then we say you're in the position of a saint.
민감한테 왔어?
The stages before that, you still have your afflictions,
보살 초지에 들어서야 이때부터 이제 성유라 그랬어.
and your afflictions only ends when you enter into the first stage of Bodhisattva, and also when you are in the when you are also on the verge of attaining the enlightenment, the complete enlightenment.
번뇌장이 다 끊어진 상태는
This is
보살 10지 가운데 초지에 이르렀을 한지에 이르렀을 때
where here is written the thusness or suchness or the trueness. Here the jin, which is true,
이것은 진여를
refers to the real, same as my name, without lies.
진여라는 것은 뭐냐면 이제 이
What is lie here?
그죠?
The greediness, anger, foolishness. We say they are the lies.
진여가 그렇잖아요. 진짜는 여기
And because three of them have disappeared, we say it's true.
거짓이 없는. 거짓이 이게 뭐예요? 거짓이 탐욕.
This is not. This is Chinese understanding of the letter. This Chinese letter understanding. This is not.
그래서 이 세 가지가 없어.
Well, this is not to look down on women. Before, the females they gather and they had some. They were planning to revolt, and so the king called them and hit them once, and they told out the whole story.
요거는 그래서 옛날에
Well, as for men, there could also be people who have said, but
본장 딱 한 방 치니까
they not everyone has told the story, but when women they were bitten once, they have told the whole story, and because of that, the shape that's just like the woman's mouth. It means you have told the truth.
하는데 분놈도 있겠지만은도 그막 그냥 우기고 네가 잘못해 왕 네가 잘못했니
So women they cannot lie something big.
한 방만 때리니까 그냥 아이고
Where they lie about things that they bought without discount, but they still claim that they got with a discount. They bought $1,000 product, but because they feel sorry, They say the sale there was 60% discount, so you paid $400.
그 여자는 큰 거짓말 못해. 이제
Well, even the $600 discount is a big lie.
100만 원짜리 살아놓고 아이고 미안하니까
Well, white lie here, it become if you put white lie because the two words are in contrast to each other. It's just like the oil and water. So even for Hongil-dong, we should not say he's actually the good person. Even the white lie, it applies the same.
뭐 물과 기름이 돼.
And after doing that, if your husband is again good to you, then you tell the truth.
도둑놈을 붙이지 말든지 의롭다는 것을 붙이지 말든지 그래야 돼.
Well, actually, and you start off, you cannot lie because it feels so itchy. Well, actually,
그래 놓고 영감이 잘해주면 또 부럽부러.
I paid $1,000, but I was afraid that you'd say something, and so I have lied to you, but you're not going to get angry. And that's why we use the word "여" here. Same "여." When you're writing the letter, this letter originated like that.
샀는데 뭐라 그럴까 싶어서 내가 그냥
Where if I listen, I know it.
했는데 화낼 거지.
I know it if I listen to it. So, the fact without any lies, we call that as trueness or suchness. Trueness or suchness. And this is also spoken as the true form in the Lotus Sutra.
들어보면 다 안다니까. 그래 이거야.
The actual form
거짓말이 하나도 없이
as it is,
그대로를 지녀라 그래.
without any misunderstandings.
이걸 갖다 이제 법화경에서는 실상
Where someone has also told me before, Venerable Jinok, what do I look like? And I say, you look like a thief.
실제 모습이다.
Because he has 6 stars from the prison. And he asked, do I still look like a thief? And I said, yes. And he said, what do I have to do in order not to look like a thief? And he said, and I told him, you can stop stealing. And he asked, how do you speak so easily? And I said, it's very easy to say, easy to think, but it's very difficult to do so. And if I have no afflictions, then even the ghosts cannot see us. But if we have no agony, then even if the messengers of death comes to get us, they will not be able to see us. I've told you the story about how I have put the song title 100 Years of Age as my coloring. They cannot find us, the messengers of death. And what does it mean? It means in me, going and coming, I am free from boundaries or restrictions. You too, when you want to come to the teaching, there are many things pulling your leg. You don't? And also, when you want to go home, you feel you want to stay here longer. So there are things that hinders us in coming and going. And if you're not swayed, then there is no coming and going. Although there is coming and going, there is no sense of, oh, I like it or I hate it. So this trueness, seeing it as it really is, when do you see it? When the greediness and sufferings disappear, and through the samatha and vipassana, you are able to see. And here, when we say you see, it doesn't mean you see like an object. But as the boundary disappears, you see its boundaries.
보이느냐면
I've given many examples of this. What is the true form of spring? What is spring?
지와 간을 통해서 사라지면서 이제 보이는 거야 이게.
Warmness is spring. Then if we heat up our room, is it also spring? Do you sit in your room in winter with the heating, and do you say it's a spring? What about flowers? Then
어떻게 봄이죠?
you mean if the flowers blossom?
따뜻한 게 봄이라고 그럼 방 안에 불 때는
Well, even the spring doesn't have its form.
겨울에 방에 불 때는
When there is a camellia flower is also there in winter.
그 뭐가 봄이야?
If the weather becomes a little warmer and if it also rains a little more, in total we call them as spring. But that doesn't mean the spring is there as a different entity. So someone named Do, he wrote a poetry.
철쭉 피고
In search of spring, he wandered around the prairie the whole day, and when his legs hurt, he came and realized the flower of spring. Well, it's the spring.
총칭해서 봄이라 그런다. 그렇지만 봄이
What is
따로
trueness?
봄을 찾아보면 봄은 따로 없죠, 그죠? 그래서 뭐 또
It is not that it has a form and you look at it as an object, but when your all greediness and attachments disappear, then even when you are seeing the same object, you realize that that doesn't have its true or eternal form, and so
라는 것은
you see it as the form when as it is instead of seeing it as something of your attachment. The form as it is.
바보는 똑같이 눈은 저 계몽나무를 보고
Well,
똑같이
all
사람을
beings,
보지만은
you can see the true form of all beings. There will be no misunderstanding because of our desire.
그대로의 모습으로 보인다.
I will give you an example how our desire affects it.
그럼
When Africa's Hindakuti died, did you cry?
실상에 실제 제법 실상에 모든 존재 제법이라는 게 모든 존재라고
Well, when Nelson Mandela died,
모습을 그대로 보고
you cried. You didn't?
돼지에 보는 이런 것이 하나도 없다 그런 얘기예요.
But
얼마나 욕망에 의해서 왜곡되지 뭐
when my mother dies, we cry.
아프리카 킴타쿤테가 죽었을 때 여러분 눈물 났비요? 어? 넬슨 만델라가 죽었다더라. 그래서 여러분
In reality, the death of my mother or Nelson Mandela, they are not different. But just that between me and my mother, there is emotional attachment, emotional connection. But with Nelson Mandela, there is no emotion connected. So for someone, you have your emotions, you feel sad, and for someone who you have no emotions attached to, you just feel that well, their person has died. So both of them, we are not able to see the true form. Even the death of Mandela, we are not able to see the true form. And even the death of your mother, you're not able to see the true form. Because of affections and also attachment, you cry and you feel sad. And so the sadness becomes stronger. That's why you need samatha's practice of unswaying.
사실은 실상을 못 보는 거라. 만델라의 죽음에 대해서도 실제
As samatha is cultivated,
어머니의 죽음에 대해서도 실제 모습. 어머니 죽음을 보면서는 애착이
you need the strength of concentration of samatha.
모습을 보기 때문에 슬픔이 가득해져 버리고. 그래서 이제 이게 사마타의 부동심이라는 게 필요하단 말이에요.
These are the contents taught in Nungagyong, and
사마타가 이루어지면서 사마타 일심의 그 마음이 집중되지는 이 힘이 필요하단 말이에요.
but this is not actual practice, but it refers as the bodhisattvas are entering on the verge of the God arena.
임능각에서 가르치는
Here is written as the Bodhisattvas, the wisdom of non-discrimination. Well, I have explained about this many times.
신의 행의 경지에 신의 힘으로 들어갔음을
But
의미하는
we are not able to identify this clearly in Korea, and it has caused quite a lot of misunderstanding. What is the wisdom of non-discrimination? First, we have to start off with explanation of discrimination, because without discrimination, we say
설명을 했지만은
no discrimination. We say there's indiscrimination. So, when there is Atma,
정확하게
when there is something that we so call as I, and because of I who is being talked about, there are things we like and we don't like, and we also have things to throw away, and because of that, we also have two separate or two different divisions of mind.
아가 있고 나라는 것이
And this is a phenomenon that has arisen because of I. But if we look at it as the object and say, well, I don't like the pine tree, or I like the pine tree, those two opinions, well, it has actually nothing to do with the pine tree, but it is just a phenomenon that has occurred because of your greediness. We call that as discrimination. But when we say you enter into the wisdom of non-discrimination, with the cultivation of absence of self, you see the pine tree as it is. You don't see it with the relation of goodness or badness, especially
얘기고 지 고집되어진 욕심
especially in study of Buddhism. This sickens us a lot.
라는 얘기는 무슨 얘기냐면
Well, I didn't like that person. Then think about it. You say you don't like the person, but do you think that person's children hate him too? They will not hate him. But if that's so,
에서 굉장히 아주 깊이
you don't hate the person because he is to be hated, but it means he doesn't befit your benefit. But if you let go of your greediness, then there's no likeness or hatred. In other words, if you say I hate that person, that's also in a way showing that you are showing your the dirty side of your greediness. Well, I don't like that person.
내 이익에 안 맞다
But for us, it's more like, well, you are very dirty.
것을 버리고 나라는 것을 버리면 그가 싫고 좋은 일이 없단 말이야. 그래서 다시 얘기해서 거꾸로 얘기하면 내가 저 사람이 싫어라고 얘기하는 것은 뭐냐면 본인 욕심에 더러운 욕심
The sense of non-discrimination, with the disappearance of self, you lose the anger and also the selfishness and annoyance. And when you treat someone, you're very peaceful, and you treat everyone equally. But if I have the sense of hatred,
무분별심이 된다는 것은 아가 사라지면서 욕심도
then that's almost like you are eating a poison for someone who is actually practicing Buddhist teachings.
아주 평정하고 공정하고 사람을 대하건 무엇을 대하건 다 그렇단 말이야. 그 내가
So the sense of like and dislike,
미운 마음을 내고 아주 좋아서 엎어지고 하는 것은 이건 돌을 닦는 사람에게서
where
극약을
study of Dharma is not difficult at all.
똑같은 행태라.
But with the sense of discrimination, I like this and I don't like this. If you try to stop that because you hate that, then you can achieve Dharma. You can study Buddhism.
정도가에
You understand?
시도가 아니라 지극한 돈은 하나도 어렵게 해서 유연간택이라 분별하는 해서 이건 좋고 이건
So take North Korea for example.
이것을 미워서 끊으려고 하면 도가 이루어진다고
They also criticize South Korea a lot, and they curse South Korea a lot. And for a group that doesn't have the stability,
같은 경우 이제
the road to their survival, as time goes, it becomes more narrow.
이북도 그렇고 막 남한을 유혹을 해가지고 막 그냥
Yesterday, from the Center Party, they had some
충성심이고
some lessons.
그렇게 평정심을
The Sanury party invited him to ask the question, why did they lose in the party? And the feedback they got was, they can be conservative,
어저께 뭐
but
최장
don't
기자
forget that city, that,
진옥
that
학생
but don't forget that democracy is the honor. When they wanted to take part in the party, where did the democracy lie? Because of the Pakune's
뭐라 그랬냐? 보수주의를
because of Pakune's order, things that would not even be there, even at the time of the uh, even if the time of the aristocracy
공천할 때 민주주의가 어디 있었나?
happened, there was no democracy at all in this election.
시대 때 독재 유신 독재
They should have asked people uh,
무슨 뭐
who was going to nominate or elect. Even the president's vote is same. Because they only asked one party, this kind of thing happened, isn't it? Regarding that vote, the democracy is very equal because even the beggars, they have their own democracy. Even if they have their rights, they have the right to choose or elect someone who gives them good meal.
대통령 표도 한 표야? 그 한 표한테만 물어봐놓으니까 저렇게 됐지. 그러잖아요, 그죠? 그 표에 있어서는 참 민주주의
Where here, the thing that I have to identify is
나도 내가 내
in accumulating dharma or the way,
누가 말려 그걸?
you need to have the sense of discrimination. Well, don't tell me that I ask you to have not to discriminate, but well, you need to be able to discriminate if you're entering into the right path or wrong.
그러면 이제
If I, you should not be, you should have the sense of discrimination from the beginning, at the beginning.
분별이 있어야 돼.
Well, let's have a glass of drink.
세라고 놓고 또 뭔 분별이 있어? 이것이
Oh, I was told not to drink. Why do you discriminate such things?
할수 있어야 돼. 알겠죠?
Because with that asked for the non-discrimination, alcohol fights, if all of them are not discriminated, then it's not okay.
술을 한잔 합시다.
So
먹으러 해야
don't misunderstand this. Regarding these teachings, even when you are practicing samatha, until the seventh stage of bodhisattva, you need to be able to identify clearly.
분별로 하고
So by identifying the right teaching, you are entering or you are understanding the non-discrimination.
그래서 그것마저 그렇게 하라는 얘기 아니에요. 예?
Even you, when you go to the market, and
꼭 그러면
poor saint,
보살 칠추심에 들어갈 때까지는 정확하게 분별해야 돼.
where as for the lake, you have to buy something which is wide at the bottom, and for the bean sprout, you have to buy something like this. If they come and tell you something like this.
여러분도 이제 시장을 갔어요.
Where as for the bean sprout, because we have such good water in Sokchon Monastery, when we grew it, it was like 120 times more delicious.
어였고 이런 걸 사야 돼.
We can eat like one bowl, one plate.
콩나물은 상인 스님표를 사야 되고 뭐 그런 얘기를 한다.
Well, if we want to make some dish,
길러 먹어보니
we have to know if you are going to buy the which kind of ingredient. But if someone who is sitting beside says, why do you discriminate between the ingredients? Just buy anything you like.
그럼 우리가 이제 가서 뭘 사는데 아 이거 뭘 이거
Well, do you need a rice cake in the rice cake dish?
그걸 갖다가 굵은 걸 살까
Then do you think it's okay to buy anything?
해야 되잖아요, 그죠? 그런데 이제 그 옆에 있던 엉터리 도인이 그런 걸 뭘 분별해 아무
There is no need to discriminate in Buddhist teaching. Living in front of the mountain and back of the mountain, that's also Buddhist teaching. And
가래떡이 들어가야 돼요, 안 돼요? 근데 아무
well, when we are young,
되겠어?
someone was studying Buddhism.
어.
So I went there
뭐 이렇게
not long after I
한국
became a
사람들이
monk,
어?
and they say he prays really well,
세계에서 사람들이
really hard.
가지고
And since we are not very sure, we tagged along someone,
실은
and he
세계에서
was hitting, he was playing some instrument, and he was singing about different mountains.
어저께 누가 참 불교를 한다 그래서 이제 이제 출가한 지 얼마 안 돼서 가니까
And
그런 거
so I
정말
asked what
멋있다 그래요.
kind of scripture that is, and he said that is something like Saman scripture, where that kind of thing should not be discriminated, right? That's also Buddhism, isn't it?
그걸 줄줄줄줄줄줄줄 그래서 산이 뭐 앞산 뒤산이지 무슨
Even you, when you wear your clothes, you should not identify which is inside and which is outside. You have to wear like how Yandu wears. Where there was a beggar and he would wear bigger clothes inside, and the smaller ones he would start wearing outside, and his clothes would just roll up. And at the very outside, he will only wear underpants.
연도 옷 입듯이 해야 돼.
So even when you are wearing clothes, it's okay to wear them without any sense of discrimination, right?
큰 옷부터 앞에 안에 입어. 큰 옷부터 안에 입어. 작은 옷을 점점
And
바꿔서 입어.
here, what I'm implying is, I'm not talking about that kind of discrimination or identification. The right teaching is the right way to get rid of the agony. Just like the math formula, we need to have the right formula. Then only it doesn't get wrong and it progresses in the right way. If the formula is wrong, then it's already wrong.
법에서는 이 왜냐면 정법이라는 것은 바른 방법이거든. 번뇌를 없앨 수 있는 바른 방법. 정확한 공식을 갖다 수학 공식 가지고 하듯이 정확한 공식을 갖고서 해야
Well, about 15 years ago, or maybe 20 years ago,
진행되면 달라요.
someone made a stew.
공식이 틀려버리면 벌써 틀리잖아.
And I asked, did you prepare this the way you prepare the beef stew? And the person said, no, it's soybean paste. And when I asked, do you think I know the meaning of the beef
15년째니까 그 정도.
beef stew? I have just put everything together and boiled.
야 이거 소죽이다.
Even the tofu, if you boil long, then the protein hardens, and the leek and other spices, it has to be at the very end. Then it has the fresh scent.
두부 이런 거다
But I have just cut everything and put there together, and that's just like preparing a porridge. And even at the time,
가서 팍팍 끓여버리면 딱딱해져 버리거든 단백질이.
well, that's how I prepare the soybean paste. I put a little bit of red chili paste to make it taste better.
그런 걸 한꺼번에 잘 해가지고
And I boil the soybean paste first,
소죽거리는 거지 뭐야.
and then I put potato, and then I put the pumpkin,
딱 깨가지고
and after that I put tofu
된장 낄 때는 고추장을 꼭
and maybe the leek or some more spices.
먼저 깨서
Then it tastes very fresh, and also even the tofu is very soft.
이제 그 다음에 뭐 넣냐면 감자 넣어. 그 다음에 이제 호박 넣고. 그리고 그 다음에 이제 두부 넣고.
Well, I know that it angers you when you have prepared the stew in the right way at the right time. But if your husband comes late, you have to boil it again. And I know it angers you. But when your husband comes and says,
찌개를 끓인 사람이
well, I'm sorry that you have to boil your stews for the second time. If the husband says that, it's a little better. But if the husband says, if this tastes and that tastes the same, then you get a little angry.
근데 와서 말이라도 아이고 그걸 알면 말이야. 자네 찌개 끓여 놓은 거 이거 두 번 끓여서 그렇게 해서 미안하네 이게 맛이 미안하네 그냥 그렇게라도 말해주면 좋은데 이 맛이나 저 맛이나 뭐 다 똑같구만. 이러면 이제 성질이 좀 나지.
You have those four different categories.
신의 행에 경지를 신의 힘으로 들어갔음을 의미하는 것이 실제 행은 아닌데 여기서
The four holy ways of learning Buddha's teaching.
이게 이제 이 하음에서 신해 행증
When you enter into the 10th state of wisdom, then you can start experiencing.
십행 요까지는 뭐냐면 신해 십신은
You can have a concrete experience of what you have done so far.
체험 정은
You can start with your own experiences.
지혜 이제
And when the experiences when the experiences happen, you also build up your wisdom. Before you start to experience, the experiences will not
확실한 체험
approach you as the experience. They'll come to you as a belief, and they will look like you're trying very hard to achieve them. But in reality, if you pass over the wisdom, then it comes to you as an experience. And even the experience, the size is all different.
그런 것이 체험으로 와서 닿질 않아요.
So starting from the beginning stage of Bodhisattva,
이해하는 것으로 돼 있고 그다음에 내가 그
when you go
하는 것으로 돼 있고 그런데
to the stage
실제 보살을
of the land of Dharma close, then even the experience becomes very different.
체험으로 와서 닿기 시작한다. 그 체험도 이제 크기가
And inside that experience, even the depth or the size becomes all totally different. And while that happens, you also see the form of Bodhisattva, and just like
완전히 이제 그 단계마다
Tsongkhapa, you can also hear the teachings of Manjushri for a long time.
이제 이루어지고 이제 그렇게 되는 체험 속에서
If you are in such a state for a long time, well, if you listen to the teaching from Bodhisattva directly, then even if you don't listen to many words, you can experience it all.
문수보살에게 직접 법문을
So even Lam
하고 이제 그런 경지에 오랫동안 문수보살에게서 그 보살 대보살에게서 직접 만약에
Lam was written by Tsongkhapa after he met and listened to the teachings of Manjushri. So even Lam has no boundaries or restrictions at all. When you see someone suffering, then you have the compassion building up naturally.
문수보살을 칭견하고 그분으로부터 법문 들은 이후에 쓰신 거라서 하나도 걸림이 없이 다 쓰셔버리자.
Here it also implies that because we know that all sentient beings that goes through the samsara goes through some suffering. So that's why whoever it is that we see in this world, we realize that that person is also going through the suffering.
저절로 일어난다가 아니라
Well, even the mother of this life, if you see, or the mother of many lives before, or people who has no relation with me, you feel that for the sake of them, in order to save them, I have to try harder, and you will have those kind of feelings that you want to help them.
어머니를 보더라도 그 전생 그 전생의 어머니들이었다고 보는 사람들이라도
Only if we have that kind of sentiments arising, that is the normal bodhisattva.
분심해서 노력해야 되고 이들을 구제하기 위해서 내가
It's important to strengthen this heart with 6 paramitas. And it should not just end with the emotions, but with the emotion that has been cultivated or developed. Step by step, you have to make an offering, and you also have to tolerate discipline, samatha, vipassana. And while doing that,
이제 그렇게 마음이 일어나는 것으로서 끝나버리면 안 돼.
even simple words, try to be of help. And even in terms of little objects, if they have any problem, try to be of their help.
인욕행, 정진행, 사마타와
Well, if we live our life with selfish thoughts, then when we treat others, everything moves with my selfishness and my greediness, and that's why we are bound to harm others. Although we say we are not doing it, naturally it happens so.
근데 이제 이기적인 생각으로 우리가 살아가면 상대를 대할 때 전부 다 내 이기적으로 움직이고 내 욕심으로 움직이기 때문에 상대에게 손해를 주게 돼요.
Also, we are humans with the personality and also wisdom.
그렇게 되게 되겠어요.
So, what is right and what is wrong? We have the ability to figure out what is wrong and right. So, the sense of judgment, only human beings have it, whether it is wrong or whether it is right.
지성을 갖추고 있는 인간입니다. 따라서
And that's why human beings are like the bardo in samsara, and that's why it's very important to do your practice when you're human. You cannot do your practice even in hell and even in the hungry ghost. Well, the great bodhisattvas, they can have their practice in hell, but us, we cannot do it. So, and even in heaven, we cannot do our practice.
수행을 갖다 하는 것이
When you are human, we can judge the right and wrong, and that's why we can proceed with our practice.
지옥에서도 수행이 되지.
And it's very important to develop this knowledge with power of observation. The observation here is vipassana through samatha,
잘못을 갖다 판단할 수
and when you have the proper perception through samatha, you're cultivating the vipassana, and that's important. Likewise, together with this, you have to build up purification of yourself and also accumulation of the merit. It applies to you and also to me. Until it's completed and we attain enlightenment, we have to purify ourselves, and we also have to expand the deeds that accumulates our merit.
중요하다. 이와 함께 정화와 공덕 쌓기를
Basically, it's very important to develop the right wisdom.
그리고 나도 마찬가지고 완성해서 승부를 하기 전까지는 자기를 정화시키는 작업들을 계속해 나가요.
Amongst the six paramita, the very last paramita, the right wisdom.
공덕을 확대시키는 작업들도 계속해야죠.
So after cultivating samatha and when we make an observation, the observed observation should be having the same consequence or same result as Buddha.
그 정해
And only if you have wisdom, you can understand the ultimate meaning.
바른 지혜를 갖다 그 비파사 관찰
Well, likewise, if you have wisdom, then you can
부처님 생각과 똑같이 나와야 돼.
make an observation of its true nature and the voidness.
진리에 대한 의미를 이해할 수 있고 점검할 수 있는 그렇게 돼야 이제 그렇게 되면서 지혜가 생
Again, you can build up your senses for the actual trueness. Here, the actual trueness is the suchness as it is, without any misunderstandings. The form as it is. You can have abundant power to feel and observe this. So, without any misunderstanding, if you can make an observation of the reality, and also we can develop our consciousness. So there's no reason for us to misunderstand or confused or have our agonies, and then our afflictions will disappear. And such analytic approaches need the help from the right understanding or practice. Well, rather than to say the right understanding, in order to practice vipassana, samatha has to support it. The practice of voidness and compassion let us see the face of our hurt and help us to remove it. The voidness and no form in this world. If we know that accurately, then the attachments for it and the afflictions for it, and also the greediness they will have no reason to come. And if you study this in detail, then there is no reason for them to appear. And since the reasons disappear, then through the voidness,
착신과 거기에 대한
the afflictions disappear, and the compassion will also develop from it. And before that,
관찰해 놓고 보면 그걸
when you cannot observe the voidness of no property, when you make an observation of an object, you start with your affections.
이라는 것을 통해서
The observation that we make in our normal philosophy is all observation of the attachment, and since they are not away from the attachment, they can always commit an error. So even the start itself is beginning with the error, so it only remains as the wisdom or knowledge. The wisdom in Buddha studies, the essence of it is experiencing or experiences of voidness.
관찰이기 때문에 그것이 오류를 범하는 것이
Well, today we are going to finish our teaching here.
되어서 그건 지식에 불과한 것이 지혜에 해당이 안 된다는 겁니다.
Well, please give that to me, the printout.
심의 공부성 체험이야. 자, 오늘은 전라도 몰래
Well, you haven't received the post yet, right? You didn't get it yet. Suctions are so slow, so well, the head monk is so slow, so we didn't send it yet.
그 10일 날은 여러분 우편물 아직 도착 안 했죠? 우편물 집에 아직 도착 안 했죠? 석천사는 그냥 너리 터져가지고 아직도 안 보냈어. 내가 주지가 너리 터져서. 그 10일 날은 BBS 우리 방송국
The channel is 105.7 FM. But in olden Yosu,
그 방송국 채널이요.
the wavelength is weak
100 FM
because this Mare mountain gets the
105.7
frequency.
FM
You know the Kubong mountain? It's sent from the Kubong mountain. So
그 구여수 있죠? 구여수는 전파가 약해서 아직 안 보니까 이 마레산이 전파를 받아버렸어.
the wavelength, it is blocked by different mountains. In Yeocheon you can hear, and Gwangyang is really good, and Suncheon you can hear from in some parts.
마레산이 들이
But they're going to put another antenna in this area, then all of us can hear too. And even in Suncheon,
이제 안 나와. 그래서 여천은 나오는데
those who are traveling to that area, they're having the testing
그런데 이제
right now, so you can hear it.
요쪽 지역에다 안테나를 하나 더 세운답니다. 그러면 이제 다 나온대요. 나오고 이제 순천에 하나 더 세우고 해서 지금 이제 저쪽에 올라가시는 분들은 105.7로 한번
And we're going to have the opening ceremony on 10th May
시험 방송 하고 있으니까 요게
at Chiminugan
우리가 이제 그
at 5:30. You have to enter until 5:30,
5월 10일 날 시민회관에서 몇 시?
and it will be on live from 6 o'clock. The radio live would be at 6, so the time has to be accurate.
입장을 갖다가
You cannot be slow.
여름식을 갖다가 이제 농악으로 할 거니까
When it sounds do, you have to stop even when you're doing something. So
전국에 그 BBS 생방송이 라디오 생방송을 갖다 그대로 다 나가버리기 때문에 시간
the opening ceremony will probably at 5:30 and will finish at 5:50. And since the since it has to start from 6 o'clock, there will be no time gap even for a second, and it will start at the right time. And for about 40 minutes, the it should be about 40 to 45 minutes script. And then after the ceremony,
1초도 여유가 없이 바로 시작할 겁니다. 하고 그러면 한 40분 정도 40분 정도 할 거예요. 40분이나 45분 정도 이제 지금 짜고 있는.
well, you remember chewing Doma, right? And although we sent a mail, it seems like there was no proper response, so we are going to leave that out. And was it 2012?
추잉 돌마 있죠, 그죠?
Uppsala came. It was about 10 minutes, and it was a UNESCO's.
무슨 메일을 보내놔도
Uh,
메일마다 열을
it's also good to see it once because
그냥 그거는 시간을 못 맞출 것 같아서 놔두고.
when Cambodia's killing field massacre happened, all of them were killed.
이번에 한번 2012년인가요? 압살라 무용을 한번
But fortunately, one person survived.
10분 정도 되고 그 유네스코 지정 그
And
그것도 여러분이 꼭 한번 봐주시는 게 한 번 더 봐주시는 게 좋은 게 왜냐하면 그게 캄보디아
he restored that, and now it is UNESCO's
다 죽여버렸어요.
cultural asset.
그랬는데
And the Uppsala dance is about 10 to 12 minutes,
어떻게 요한이
and along with other Buddhist traditional dances.
지정 신청을 해서
Well, they are international people who travel abroad, and so the cultural performance will be really good. The Tibetan performance last time was also good, right? And it will be as good as the other one.
그리고 이제 다른 그
This time, about 18 people are coming, and so the stage will be quite full.
정도 아주 그 사람들은 국제적으로 이제 다 다니는 사람들이에요.
And there will also be a performance on the day before the Buddha's birthday. So there will be total 2 performances.
그래서 이번에는 티벳은 8분인가밖에 못 왔지만 이번엔 18분 옵니다. 18분 와서 그 무대가 꽉 찰 거예요. 그래서
Hope you can spread the word to your close ones and participate together
공연할 겁니다.
for the opening ceremony.
그어서 한번 공연하고 2번 공연할 거예요. 그래서 그렇게 이제 할 거니까 그 BBS 오픈
Well, the information has already been sent out,
분들한테 다 이렇게 말씀하고 이렇게 좀 같이 나오실 수 있도록.
but since there are too much content, and if you don't read it in detail, well, even if you read it, I think you can also forget the beginning part since there are too much. So just take that as a reference.
안내문을 갖다 이렇게
And
전문으로 해서
another important thing is on 28th,
안에 보니까 내용이 너무 많아가지고 자세히 돋보기고 이렇게 읽어 안 보면 읽어봐도 그냥 앞에 읽은 거 잊어버리고 그렇게 생겼습니다.
the mayor has also prepared a Christmas tree for Christians.
이제
And in accordance to that,
또 이제 중요한 게 하나 28일 날 있죠.
I think he spent quite a lot of money, about $38,000 for the Buddhist stupa. So there will be a lighting ceremony in front of the city hall at 7. So if you come at 7:10, it will be finished. It's only going to last for 10 minutes, the illumination ceremony. So come about 20 minutes before
들었을 거예요.
to attend the illumination ceremony.
지금 시청 앞에 있죠. 시청 앞에
It will be great if all of you can come together.
10분에 오면 끝나버립니다.
I have said this many times.
그 전에 한 20분 전에 오셔요. 오셔서
It will be difficult for mayor and also the members of parliament to move around.
전야제를
So we are going to have the another performance the day before. It costs more, but inevitably I have to do it.
두루 돌아다니기가 힘들다고.
So and that starts from 7 o'clock.
우리는 전야제로 할 거니까 전야제로 하면 돈이
and it's going to finish at 10. I thought about dinner, and
하고 뒷날 그 저녁에 여기는 7시부터 할 거죠.
well, I heard that hot dog, the sweet pancake of Korea, was quite popular last year.
그래서
And even the fish, even the fish bread, although there's no fish inside, it was not very popular. But I asked them to prepare that fish and also some tea, and
틀을 2개 가져서
so there'll be some breaks or snacks prepared.
그리고 이제
So come with your family
붕어가
and enjoy the performance and the show. And the next day there'll be no performance, but there'll only be prayers and teachings.
붕어빵도 굽고 뭐 떡도 하고 또 음료수도 따뜻하게 이렇게 차도 하고 해서 저녁은 그냥 땜빵으로 이렇게 이어와서 드시고 그렇게 해서 가족들끼리 다 오셔서 공연도 즐기시고 뒷날은
The rest read the contents inside,
기도회만 기도하고 본문만 이제
and please participate well.
그렇게 해 주십시오.
Thank you.